Oftentimes, when people visualize the American Revolution, they think of George Washington in a boat. However, the American Revolution was not all fighting, with many strategic actions shaping a courageous and successful attempt at gaining independence. This seems like a miracle due to the vast power of the British Empire being defeated by a group of insignificant colonists. But it was no miracle. In fact, the American Revolution would likely have failed if colonial women did not keep society running. The colonists' victory was upheld by their wives, sisters, and daughters. They should be accredited much more in textbooks and encyclopedias for the success of the United States. But why? Rebellious ploys were developed in colonies when they were stirred up in the 1760s due to the Stamp and Townshend Acts, with major local rebel groups being the Sons of Liberty and the Daughters of Liberty. Like the average teenager, these groups did anything and everything to defy the order of their parents, or England in this case. They were responsible for insurrections including the Boston Tea Party, but most notably, they conducted mass-scale boycotts against British merchants. However, the Sons of Liberty did not pull their weight when it came to boycotting. They oftentimes gave in to the temptations of lower prices of British goods even after taxes were applied, but fortunately, they were not the primary purchasers. The Daughters of Liberty, on the other hand, had an influence on colonial women who were the largest source of potential customers and succeeded in boycotting British products to the extent that British trade in the colonies was no longer profitable. These societal discrepancies added to tensions between the British and colonists, eventually becoming the Revolutionary War. As mentioned earlier, the Revolutionary War did not revolve around George Washington, but it did involve many men leaving their households to fight a brutal war. This gave the women an opportunity to prove themselves as effective. Women adopted the roles which men usually occupied, including chopping wood, providing for their families, and even having a political stake. These women who took over their husbands' responsibilities were given the respective name deputy husbands. No, not because they policed around the colonies, but because they pushed societal expectations to the point where they had to create an entire role to describe the enormity of responsibility they covered. In fact, their spare time was oftentimes used up by their original housekeeping role. However, not all women chose to stay at home. Not all women had a family to tend to back at home, resulting in them following their husbands, fathers, and brothers into the war zone. They were known as camp followers because they literally followed military camps. Wow, colonists, how creative. Despite the bland name, camp followers played a huge role in the Continental Army. They cooked, cleaned, did laundry, repaired clothes, and fixed up injured soldiers. As underwhelming and stereotypical as this may seem, these tasks provided commodities that soldiers depended on to keep their morale up and to keep them alive, of course. However, some women believed that this way to serve their new nation was not enough and decided to take it a notch higher. Some women went above and beyond to ensure their nation in the making succeeds, hosting a cannon event. However, not the kind of cannon event you're probably thinking of. During the Battle of Washington in 1776, Margaret Corbin in her 20s accompanied her husband to provide water to combat the high temperature. Unfortunately, her husband died while operating a cannon, leaving her with a crucial choice to make. Corbin could either tolerate the loss of her husband and deliver water, or she could avenge him and represent the strength of colonial women across the colonies. Corbin took the unconventional yet highly courageous action of controlling the artillery which her husband died using to hold off British forces. Despite the efforts, the Continental Army lost the battle, resulting in Corbin being taken as a prisoner of war. Funnily enough, Corbin was set free by the British after being identified as a feeble woman, unknown to the British troops of her heroic actions against them. Corbin is no exception to other women at the time, rather is an accurate representation of a colonial woman's capabilities. An uncannily similar scenario were the actions of Mary Ludwig Hayes, also known as Molly Pitchers. Similar to Corbin, Hayes also manned a cannon after her husband was killed while operating a cannon. A few women took fighting a step even further. Before the time of bald eagles, hamburgers, and muscle cars, patriotism had to be proven. But some extraordinary women pretended to be men to ensure that what is now the United States succeeds. One in particular is Deborah Sampson, who joined the 4th Massachusetts Infantry under the name of her late brother Robert Zertleff. Even though she was rejected her first attempt in joining the army, she persevered and got in the second time. Sampson's second attempt was no easier than her first, but by claiming that she was a teenager when asked about her lack of facial hair, combined with her tall stature, she was admitted into the military. Sampson's struggle did not end there. She was hit by grape-shot ammunition from a musket and successfully removed parts of the shrapnel on her own to avoid the hospital to preserve her true identity. She ended up going to the hospital after the remaining shrapnel still in her body got infected, but the doctor kept her identity a secret. Sampson was an idol for many, with her level of patriotism carrying over after the war. After American independence, men returned back to their traditional jobs, restricting women again. Regardless of this, women still had an important role in society, which even men recognized. Many women were in charge of raising the younger generation into practicing Republican values in the newly formed republic. These women were known as Republican mothers and greatly assisted in the shaping of the United States as it is today.